Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Kanak Gokar, and I'm an officer at the Sustainable Energy team at the ICLEI World Secretariat. I'm very glad to welcome you to our session today on catalyzing change, innovative finance for the local energy transition. Before we kick off, I'd like to go over a few house rules. Attendees are muted by default just to maintain the flow of the event. There will be a Q&A session at the closer to the end of the session, so please use the chat box Q&A functions as you see fit. And we encourage healthy, respectful comments as well as any insights you might have. Just a note that external note takers are not allowed. We will be using our own note taker and we'll be sharing these notes after the session. And finally, the event is being recorded for documentation and post-event promotion purposes. So by participating, you do consent to being recorded. So thank you for paying attention to these rules. And I would hand over to our very capable moderator, Nicola Ietza, who is the manager of finance of the Finance and Funding Help Desk for the Urban Transitions Mission Center. So over to you, Nicola.
Thank you very much, Kanak, and hi everyone also from my side. It's very nice to be here and thanks a lot, Ikle, for the opportunity. So it's my pleasure today to moderate this session on blended finance for the energy transition. I am, as Kanak said, the manager of the Finance and Funding Help Desk of UTM, the Urban Transition Mission. And I will moderate the panel moving forward. Before going to that, I just had a couple of introductory slides to get you a little bit acquainted with what UTM is and why we work on this blended finance topic. I apologize beforehand for the amount of QR codes that you will see on my slides, but I promise that we'll add also the adequate links in the chat afterwards. Um, so the Urban Transition Mission, it's an initiative co-led by the Global Covenant of Mayors and the European Commission. The idea is to mobilize and empower cities globally for the clean energy transition and is a part of an umbrella organization called Mission Innovation. Up to date, we have been worked with 110 cities globally from 46 countries, aiming by 2030 to reach 300 cities and correspondingly have brokering solutions for all of them for the clean energy transition towards a net zero journey. We do this with our partners, of course. ICLEI is one of them, as well as other energy, the international energy agencies and other, as well as private company. And we will hear from one later on during this meeting. If you can go to the next slide. I would just like to mention where we come from in terms of finance and blended finance. The last year we started something called the Finance and Funding Help Desk, which is a kind of a one-stop shop aimed at connecting with the cities that are part of the mission and provide them specific support for development of ideas and funding programs as well as financing lines in close collaboration with our partners from the GCOM Alliance and from ICLEI TAP. Through time, we have developed a finance group as well as several information sharing. And through time, blended finance has come as one of the key topics that cities would like to know more about, would like to understand a bit better how it works, and would like to understand better how this can finance their climate transition journeys. If you can go to the next slide, just to mention what we have collected so far. Thank you. In the 1 year and a half, a bit more actually of activity of the help desk, we have collected 39 queries from the cities on specific projects, and we have also collected, also thanks to the information available on, for example, the CDP ICLEI track, 255 projects out of 55 of the 110 cities that are part of the mission. The aggregate investment potential of those projects is 6.4 billion US dollars, out of which 5.5 billion USD is the amount that cities are seeking for from external sources. So as you can see, more than 80% of the financing is being asked outside in the market, not from the own municipal budget resources, and is something in which we believe blended finance may have a critical role in supporting. A lot of these projects have an energy component in that. I will not go into the details of what you see in the slides in terms of the geographical slash topical split, but if you can go to the next slide, I was just wanted to mention that out of this research just a couple of weeks ago, actually in at the Mission Innovation Ministerial meeting in Busan, South Korea, we did share the results of this 1.5 years of activity to our report. Together with 10 recommendations to national government for blended finance for net zero, resilient and inclusive cities. This is something that we would like to move forward and and that it can be potentially of interest to you, together with one of the various elements that may compose the blended finance journey for cities, which is the development of public-private partnership. And here, as you can see in the slide, we have our colleagues from ICLEI Global Secretariats within the framework of the Urban Transition Mission Center have developed a policy brief on the development of PPPs for local climate action. So this is just an introductory umbrella to say that blended finance and energy transition are definitely topics that are at the core of what we do. And at least out of our experience in UTM, there is a lot of interest from cities in understanding how blended finance vehicle works, how they can be useful, and how they can be used for, among others, the energy transitions in cities. And to delve a little bit into that, we have a panel of speakers that will join me in this journey for the next hour, more or less. I would like to introduce them now, and then I will give you the floor one by one from some introductory remark. But just to say thank you for joining us today. We have the managing director and co-founder of Genie Finance, Edward Pig McLean. Genie Finance is a company which is focusing on financing, especially for the energy and building transition, and is based in Spain. We do have two colleagues from the partner company Signify. Signify is a global company focused on lighting. We have Paolo Ceccherini which is the Public and Government Affairs Director of Signify, and Jivan Shinde, which is the head of Treasury Capital, Signify as well. And last but not least, from the ICLEI World Secretariat, we have Andrea Almeida Davila, which is an officer of the Innovative Finance team of ICLEI, which, among others, manages the Transformative Action Program of ICLEI. So it's my pleasure maybe to give the floor first to Edward, which I believe is with us. I don't know, Edward, if you
Yes,
can.
I'm here.
Perfect. Okay, so Edward, please, the floor is yours for the introductory remarks.
Very good. Thank you, Nicola, for the intro, and thank you as well to the Daring Cities team for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to the discussion. I'll try to keep this very down to earth and share some insights based on Genie's on-the-ground experience working with local and regional governments in mobilizing finance for energy transition and climate action. Actually, my hope is that the content somehow will be actionable for some in the audience, which I assume most of you are exploring how to obtain further economic resources to give a push to climate action in your corresponding territories. If you go to the first slides, I would like to start by stating that the problem is not that most cities still rely on overwhelmingly subsidies. Actually, that is the consequence, not the root cause. The very problem that we have found out and experienced has these components you can see on the slide. there are limited resources or internal capacity, basically people being able and capable to dedicate to this. There is also this risk perception that from the public point of view and from the private point of view, we have different worldviews. So therefore, how we understand and analyze risk is different. Also, procurement hurdles, you know that very well, that sometimes is very difficult and complex to go through this public procurement process. Very important, we came to understand and realize that the governance in public authorities can be complex. Most of the time is siloed, so departments work as silos, and climate action is a complex problem that requires people from different backgrounds to work together. No? And also there's a lack of financial knowledge, acumen, that difficults the engagement with financiers in this process. Now, the solution, if you click on the next, and it is also a combination because it's a complex problem that requires a solution that combines several things. The first one, very important, is that municipalities and regional governments need to build capacity. And then also they need to create some internal, to create and find and bring in some internal sponsor that will facilitate the process, that will move out certain obstacles. But at the same time, and I want to really emphasize on this, is that local and regional governments really need to use external technical help to de-risk and to find solutions and answers to this problem. Now, I will come back to them in more detail in the next few slides. I only have like 4 or 5 slides. Let me first also make sure that we all understand, or what we all are on the same page when we talk about blended finance. So if you go to the next slide, what we mean by blended finance is basically the use of public money as a means to basically lower the risk and also the transaction cost in climate action projects. Now, in Europe, which is our natural turf, it often looks like these 5 elements that I'm showing you in the slide. So grants for preparation, for instance, Selena or UCF, the European City Facility, which actually give cities money so they can hire experts and prepare solid investment plans that banks and financiers can actually understand. Also, public money can actually come from the city budget, and the municipalities may cover small enabling works and set aside some reserve that can actually absorb what we call first losses. This is a technical word, but stay with me. But in the end, that makes investors or financing entities feel safer. This connects with the risk perception I was mentioning before. At the same time, public money can be used for guarantees. There are out there European or national programs like this one, PF for energy efficiency, that actually provide loans tailored for climate action and energy projects that help you also what we call pull in other banks. Because if there are one bank that is already bringing in some land or some money or some resources, other financial institutions perceive that there's a lower risk. And also, equally important, public resources, which are very limited, can be used actually to develop pay for performance contracts. So in the end, cities can sign contracts where actually the provider takes the risk. Again, this concept of risk and achieving, in the end, what we're looking for, which are either energy savings or renewable energy sources. If we go to the next slide, now going back to the element of the solution I was quickly mentioning at the beginning, these are the 4 elements that, based on our experience, can really lead to success implementation of climate action project or energy transition initiatives. The first one is that you really need to find a political sponsor, because in a municipality or in any public government, there is double roles. The public, which is an elected official, but at the same time, there are the civil servants that are there thanks to their merits from a career development point of view. So you need both to be on board, and you need both to sponsor the initiative. So you need to work on finding them and helping you to really move forward and bring people together, because that's the next recommendation for you, which is to create this task force and bring people from the relevant departments, depending on how your governance is working, and depending on the department structure is structured, then to make sure that you bring in on a same working team or a working group to make sure that you can address the different concerns, the different perspectives from every single one of them. No? The next one is you need to build capacity and knowledge, which are two different things. Capacity is more people being able to be involved, but at the same time gaining knowledge, new mind or frameworks, new concepts, new tools that you are not used to and that you need to gain in order to be better prepared and to be able to engage and talk to financial institutions. Yeah. And the last one, which I already presented, is make the best use. We tend to use the better use or a smart use of the blended finance. Those limited public funding, let's use it so we can leverage on them and go out and be able to connect and activate other funding sources beyond the public funding. Now, if you go to the next slide, again, based on our experience, there are a few pitfalls that I would suggest you to avoid, and those are learned the hard way. The first one is that financiers, financing institutions, even some grant providing facilities work with data. And they do work with data basically to assess risk. But at the same time, something that is very important, and this is the first time I mentioned, is to validate or assess the capacity to repay from that local institution, that project, or whatever initiative. So we need data. We recommend you to dedicate some resources very early on to data gathering, to meter, and to put together a register or an inventory of the buildings, lighting points, and so on. You need this information and data so we can build an investment case that can be understood and assessed by financial institutions. The next one would be avoid engaging at the later stage of the process with financial institutions. Bring them on board from early on. So they will tell you what they need to know, the information they need, in what format and so on. So you don't waste time in going back and reviewing the work you were putting together to talk to them. Again, 1 year budget logic, climate action is capital intensive. It requires some years to go through and to return the investment. So the approach needs to be on multiple year planning. And the last one I would say, and this one I left it for the last one because it's, in my experience, the most important one, is make sure that the people, that department from the legal side has enough resources to be able to support you along those process. Now, if you go to the next slide, and with this I'm almost finished, this is a complex endeavor, you know it very well, but you are not alone. So there are some partnerships you can really build to make this journey, I would say, less cumbersome. The first one is to rely on those advisory and technical assistance providers, both public and private, that will help you lift the heavy effort at the beginning when gathering the information and putting together the document and so on. Again, talk to local banks, because some of them are part of certain alliances and are willing to provide money, provided that the public authority is also involved. These guarantee de-risking involvement. Also, there are specialized funds out there like EEF who really understand the municipal risk and the municipal approach and the municipal limitations. So they are a very good partner to help you promote these climate action initiatives. At the same time, there are regional and national agencies, most likely you know. And again, the last one, perhaps the one that we really find very, very useful, is reach out and talk to your peer cities who have gone through the same process, and from you can learn a lot. Yeah. So with this, I'll wrap it up with a final thought, which is that grants are indeed fantastic. Now, grants can only buy, I would say that can only buy the de-risking and lowering or building up your capacity. So with a clear mandate, involving the politicians and involving the civil servants, becoming the visible sponsors with a cross-departmental engine room and some technical assistance from a third supplier, cities should have all the elements they need to move forward. They're not pilots, but actually pipelines of projects. And with this, happy to dive deeper in the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eduard. That was really clear, and this speaks to the basic factors for blended finance. We will probably have time actually for a follow-up round of question after we finish this round, and we'll be really happy also to maybe go a little bit more in depth, especially on the pitfall side that you mentioned. I know that you have a lot of experience with the European mission, for example, with the UC, with the European City Facility. So maybe you have also some examples to share in that sense, potentially of the work that you've done. But maybe we can do that later on at the second round. First, I would like to move to the following speakers from Signify. Signify, as I was mentioning before, is a leader in lighting solutions, also for cities, not only, and also great partners throughout the years of the Urban Transition Mission as well. And it's my pleasure to give the floor to Paolo Ceccherini for some introductory remark. And then, Paolo, you can give the floor to Jivan afterwards.
Thank you, Nicola. Thank you, Nicola. I will be very short because I would like our expert, Jivan, who really owns the wallet and gives the money, allocates the money where it's really needed. I would like to give him the opportunity to explain a bit more some experience we had and what we can provide you as suggestion. So I would like only to make a few initial remarks. The first one, thanks a lot, Edward, for the very well done introduction. Indeed, you open up the floor with a lot of preparation topic and stimuli for the next of our speech. So thanks a lot. And Nicola, I dare here to also anticipate what we are going to publish in few weeks, maybe 1 month. That is a city assessment that we run through several, quite a number of cities across UTM members and Global Covenant of Mayors members, where we asked exactly some question about how they are approaching financing and what are the hurdles that they face. And what came out, Edward, was exactly what you showed in one of the first slides. And so I bring you back in the next few months to read the report and the statistic coming from the assessment, because you will find exactly those points, but with the added value of showing percentage, understanding which of those elements count most compared to the others. Having said that, I just like to say that Signify is the world leader in lighting, by far the world leader in lighting. And maybe you know us through our brands. Among others is Philips, it's Cooper Lighting in Americas, many others across the globe. And we start very early the activity of financing lighting. And that's why Jivan can bring up a lot of insights based on that experience. And final suggestion, based on what Jivan will say and take into account the suggestion by Edward, I would like to say that lighting is one of the best opportunity to start practicing with blended finance, because with lighting, the initial investment is relatively low, and you have, based on the technology that is today available, you have a quite 100% assurance of having a very high return on investment in quick time, in an easy way. So then you can practice on that opportunity, and later on you can use blended finance for more complex projects. Now I stop talking and give the floor to the expert, to Jivan.
Second, can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Perfect. So yeah, thanks really for inviting me. And yeah, what I'm here to share is really the experiences that we've had over the last 8 to 10 years in trying to enable financing, and having gone through trying to figure out innovative methods. And as Paulo mentioned, clearly lighting is in the center of energy efficiency, and what we have experienced is something that we can share and ensure that more people can benefit out of it. I think Eduardo captured really a lot of the key challenges in this industry uh, of trying to use the best of grants, blended finance, and a lot of financiers who are awaiting or trying to figure out a way to really participate in this funding, right? And yes, one of the key challenges is the capability and bandwidth in the smaller cities to really make it work. I'm going to take you through a bit of a journey that we've had in trying to make lighting, which is not necessarily the most obvious uh, financing asset, and how we've gone through that process, and also share what we really see when we interact with multiple customers. As a background, yes, I come from a financing background and I lead capital for Signify. So we work with multiple sustainability funds, we work with private equity funds, we work with the bankers, and we do have some financing solutions which makes it easier for our customers to accelerate their lighting replacement, which clearly is, as we say, the center of the energy efficiency objective, right? So what we've seen and what we've tried to really work around is how do we get more financiers to participate and be part of this whole journey for one of the most obvious assets that everybody should be replacing first, right? Why would you want to uh, focus your energies on anything else when the most obvious asset which gives you savings from day one is out there and can clearly get replaced, right? So we went through the challenges of right from convincing the financiers that okay, this is clearly an asset which is a long-term asset, and we can really give you significant energy savings with data, which can ensure that you can improve all your sustainability metrics while also being economically efficient, right? Uh, there was a lot of initial challenges which we've pretty much managed to resolve one by one by doing multiple activities, right? Being clear of the buying process, trying to ensure that the partners are engaged and understand what risk they are taking. Eduardo also mentioned that, saying, the financiers are keen. There is a lot of money out there, but they just don't know how to deploy it. And yes, there's also a challenge on the other side that the customer in this case, which may not be a private customer, which is easier for me to fund, but a public customer who has to go and work through his frameworks for getting any approvals and moving forward, right? So what we realized is most most of the customers would be more than happy to do a longer term financing on this, because again, for lighting as an asset, we are also providing savings, right? So part of the savings already pays for your investment, and if we can spread it out, we can clearly show you the benefits, right? So we worked with private equity funds. Eduardo, you mentioned the Triple EF, the partner for Triple EF is, or the agency deploying it is also a partner on the sustainability fund perspective. So we do work closely with them almost for the last 8 years, trying to fund multiple uh, deals. And it's we went ahead and had proof of concepts out there on our unique model, which we call it as a service model, right? Which gives, on the one hand, the the customer the benefit that he can spread out the whole payments. Two, it ensures that Signify as a company continues to maintain its performance obligations, but at the same time, it brings in a financier who's willing to take the credit risk, but doesn't understand the assets, etc. So they rely on many of us to say, okay, as long as you do things right, I'm fine to work with the public entity, right? and the financing aspect and the blended finance topic in general, right? Because a lot has been said of the grants available. Yes, everybody would want a grant, but that may not always be available for everyone. Two, trying to make the project uh, with the business case and with data, and then going through the approval process can sometimes be significantly tedious and requires a lot of bandwidth and capability, right? So what we try to do is really standardize some of these, at least for a lot of our private customers and also with our financiers, right? And you would be amazed to know that every bank financier is wanting to make their portfolio greener and are just waiting for an execution mechanism for them to deploy money in projects. Unfortunately, because the understanding on both sides is not the same, there's not a meeting of minds because you need somebody who understands it from a financials perspective. How do you box the risks and how do you get it approved internally? On the other hand, you need somebody who can also convince the municipality or the city on uh, what what are the pieces that you are signing up to because they need to take their approvals as well, right? So we've gone through this journey over the last 7 8 years, and I'm saying it's not only as a service but leasing models. Almost every financier is waiting for an opportunity, and I'm not even mentioning only Europe. I've had global financiers, because please do remember that they do go in the market to raise money, and they are asked questions saying, okay, where are you on your portfolio from a sustainability perspective? How green is your portfolio? Have you been only funding the non-green assets? Yeah, you may have difficulties raising more funds in the markets, right? So yeah, I think just in the gist, we developed multiple models depending on whether the customer need is to really have an as a service. Does he need ownership on the asset and move it into a different leasing model? Even customers on the public side who are not in a position to progress because there's a working capital issue, we then try and solve it with some of our financing partners because they're more than keen to participate on this. And the whole bandwidth and the communication and clarity on how do you get more financiers in is really the part. I do believe if we can build up capabilities, there's a lot of money waiting out there to participate in the public side. We are currently in the process of developing some of that and also testing out some of those, given that we've had a decent success on the private side, and also some customers who are not really private but also quasi-private and have some linkage to public as well, right? And I do believe that with a forum of this kind, if we can share some best practices of what is the real need of each stakeholder, and if we can figure out a way to really box those risks for stakeholders, you'll be amazed at how much more can be done. Of course, if we can do it in lighting, it can happen in most parts. But I would say, given that lighting is the most critical asset and a fundamental foundation on the energy efficiency piece, and also the lowest hanging fruit, if I may add, the challenge is more on getting the execution closed with all the stakeholders because the savings are obvious, right? I will stop there. I mean, there's we didn't want to get into a whole host of slides, but the challenges that we've seen is pretty much what we started with: the customer mapping, tried to figure out all the stakeholders that are on the other side and what are their KRAs, go back to our financing partners and check what is critical for them, and then play that bridge to ensure that we can deploy it much, much, much faster, right? Because if some of those pieces are pre-agreed and templatized, uh, there's potentially uh, lot more appetite the moment you've had some of the first few deals tested, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hand it back to Paulo to add, because yes, Paulo does deal with almost all the government agencies as well, but I deal a lot more with the private banks, financiers, and sustainability funds to enable business and uh, customer financing models for Signify. And maybe he can add some pieces there as well.
Yeah, maybe, and if I could just, and thank you very much, Jivan. This was really interesting, and we can get back to that in a moment. Paolo, maybe I would ask, because we're running a little bit behind of time, if we can just get to the next speaker. We wanted to get to a follow-up question anyway, and maybe
Yeah,
you
fully
can
agree.
get.
We are there to answer to all the questions, but Andre deserves the right time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for understanding. And maybe then I'll just move it to the next speaker. Indeed, last but not least, Andre from ICLEI Local Government for Sustainability. Andre, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nicola. And thank you very much to Edward, Paolo, and Jivan for the very insightful presentations. I think my presentation speaks a lot to yours as well, in the sense that I think Edward provided this general introduction. Jivan and Paolo talked more about the models specifically to lighting, and I will speak more specifically about how to finance the e-mobility transition. So as Nicola already introduced me, I'm Andrea. I'm an officer in the innovative finance team here at ICLEI, and I'll speak more specifically about this collaboration between the TUMI IPAS mission and TAP. So TAP is one of the initiatives that we have here at ICLEI, and we worked with the TUMI IPAS mission, which was a project we had with a bunch of partners to identify financing models and business models that could be applied for deploying e-bus projects with local governments, particularly in Brazil, Ecuador, and India. I'll speak more specifically about the main output of this project, which was the investor brief that we prepared. So next slide, please. So I have very little time, so try to go very quickly over this, but just to give a little context of the TUMI IPAS mission, it's a global initiative helping cities transition to clean and efficient electric bus systems. It was active between 2022 and 2025. It just finished now in May. And it did achieve this very impressive number of preparing a pipeline of over 100,000 e-buses ready for deployment, for procurement, sorry, across over 100 cities that were part of the TUMI e-bus mission network. It has very impressive achievements you can see here, but I would just like to highlight that it also produced a lot of knowledge, so 130 publications, among which is ours that I'll speak more in more detail very briefly. But next slide, please. But before that, I'd just like to talk about TAP, also introduce TAP very briefly. So TAP is the flagship initiative of the Innovative Finance portfolio here at ICLEI. And in a nutshell, it aims to enable local and regional governments to access finance to scale up climate and sustainable development action, focusing specifically on sustainable infrastructure. So how do we do this? We are first and foremost a project portfolio. So we have over 100 projects as part of our portfolio, 100 subnational and sustainable infrastructure projects that are part of our portfolio, spread out all across the world. And then we act a bit as a project preparation facility as well, in the sense that we provide advisory services and a light touch technical assistance for these projects to help them produce more robust concepts and robust business models, and then also help them navigate the project preparation landscape, accessing opportunities for technical assistance in the form of feasibility studies, for instance, and eventually accessing financing to reach investment readiness. I wanted to highlight that our TAP call is currently open. It will remain open until the end of the month. So you can access using the link that's provided here. I also have this QR code, but I believe my colleague Charlotte has already shared the link as well in the chat. So for any local regional governments that have interest in sustainable infrastructure projects and are interested in applying to TAP, please feel free to do so on our website. It does not have to be related to mobility. So next slide, please. And as part of the TUMI e-bus mission, as part of the finance component of the TUMI e-bus mission, we also had TAP providing advisory services and helping build business models for the projects that were involved there. And the main output of this collaboration was this investor brief, whose findings and insights is also what I will bring here today. I'm not going to go into detail, but my colleague has also shared the link for this and on the chat right now. So please, I invite you all to click on that link and have a look at this product. I think it has some very interesting insights for local government. Next slide, please. But yeah, going out to the content of this document, I'd like to start by saying there is already a strong investment case for this e-mobility transition worldwide, but specifically in South America and in South Asia, in the case here, India. So I think speaking also to what Jivan spoke about the necessity to build investment case not only around the sustainable or transformative impact of the projects, but also on the business side of it, on the saving side of it. It's important to mention here that e-bus projects have a significantly e-buses in general, sorry, have a significantly lower operational costs in comparison to their diesel counterparts. Their O&M costs can be up to from 30 to 50% lower, very significantly reducing the total cost of ownership over longer periods of time. It's also, of course, important to mention that e-buses have much lower emission of greenhouse gases and local air pollutants compared to their diesel counterparts, which is one of the main reasons why we deploy e-buses. Particularly in Latin America and India, there's a very high demand for public transport and for new buses. In Latin America, bus usage is already very established. In Ecuador, for instance, over 60% of the population commutes every day by bus. But there is an aging fleet which needs to be renewed and replaced. So there is the demand for new e-buses. Whereas in India, there is a very fast-growing urban population also propelling the demand for public transport and new buses. So you have a very high demand for e-buses in both regions, and you have the policy incentives both on the national and subnational level to push for this. Next slide, please. However, you don't see e-buses being deployed on the scale and speed that we would like, and this is due as well for some challenges in implementing them. First of all, there is high upfront costs and difficulty for local governments to access financing for e-buses. So e-buses are significantly more expensive than diesel buses in terms of the capital expenditures. And local governments, as we know very well, often lack the capital and debt capacity to pay for these requirements, and often lack the legal capacity as well to obtain that to pay to conduct this kind of upfront investment. Second point is that e-bus is also incurring to operational risks for operators. So sometimes there is reluctance from their part as well due to the unfamiliar technology, requirement for new maintenance skills, and also uncertainty about the operational range and battery life. And finally, e-buses also require a lot of investment in infrastructure. So not only the charging depots and stations, but also upgrading the entire electricity grid to be able to accommodate the new demand for high voltage connections. Next slide, please. But as part of this analysis and work that we've done in the Top TUMI collaboration, we've identified a few financial and business models that have been or are being deployed in both India, Brazil, and Ecuador, and that have been largely successful in addressing these challenges. So the first one is the gross cost contract model, which is a kind of public-private partnership. It is a model where the public authority contracts a private operator, which is often the bus company or the manufacturer itself, to provide bus service for a fixed fee, usually per kilometer of operation. So in this model, the operator runs and maintains the service and the fleet, and is paid by the government based on this fee, either per kilometer or bus month, which is funded by fares. I think what is key to understand here, and I'm running out of time, so I'm gonna hurry up a little bit, is that the revenue risk remains with the local authority, but the operational risk is with the operator in this case. And this is a model that has been implemented by India in its FAME2 program in the ongoing PM e-bus CUA scheme that is acquiring a significant amount of e-buses in India, and is also a model that is implemented in São Paulo with partial subvention. So next slide, please. A second model that we identify is public ownership, but allowed through concessional finance. So here we're also talking about blended finance and very much what Edward mentioned before. So here the government is the one who acquires the buses. It may or may not operate the bus, or it may subcontract an operator through a simple service contract for the operator to operate and maintain the bus. But what allows the government or the transit authority here to carry out this, to bear this high upfront investment is the concessional finance. So here you usually have a blended finance facility where concessional finance comes as a first loss tranche. This in turn de-risks the financing, reduces the risk of the finance and allows to attract commercial finance as well to cover for the rest of the finance. So what you have in the end is financing that's much cheaper for the government, so it's accessible for them and allows them to bear this high upfront cost. So this is the model that India adopted for FAME 1, and it's also the model was adopted in Guayaquil, which deployed its first e-buses using a blended finance arrangement using the Inter-American Development Bank's climate funds as the first loss tranche. And finally, to the last model, next slide, which is asset leasing. This model is a bit less widespread, but I think what's very key here is that the owner and who retains the ownership of the e-buses is generally the manufacturer of the bus itself, and then he leases the buses to either public or private operator to run the service. So the government or the local government here does not have to bear the upfront cost because it's paying a lease, which is going to cover this cost over a longer period of time. And yeah, I think that's the key point to maintain here. It's a model that has been implemented by India in its grand challenge, which was carried out in 2022, which was I also speak more about this in the next slide. But that's the key point here. The private company, the private manufacturer maintains the ownership of the buses, and it also has cheaper access to finance, so it can acquire the buses over the long term because due to its asset collateral. So next slide, please. And just a few instruments that can allow to do risk and enhance the financial ability of this model. So these are instruments that you can add to the mix and bring together with the models that were mentioned above. For instance, bulk procurement and demand aggregation is a very effective instrument to reduce costs of investing and acquiring buses. This has been used by India in its grand challenge, where it pulled e-bus orders from many municipalities in the country and acquired 5,500 buses at once at much lower cost. You have also viability gap funding and subsidies, which can close these financial gaps for e-bus operations with the local government, either providing this viability gap funding to the private operator or a national government providing this funding to the local government itself. You have payment security mechanisms, which significantly de-risk the investment and attract private capital through escrow accounts or letters of credit. You have blended finance facility and first loss tranches, which is already explained for the Guayaquil case and the concessional finance model. And finally, you can always look at revenue enhancing mechanisms. So besides the fare box revenue, you can look at carbon credits, land value capture, even simpler things like using ads for the buses, which can enhance the revenue over the long term and make the whole financial model more feasible and sustainable over the long term. So that's all I had to say. Once again, I had to go very quickly over this presentation, but I invite you all to have a look at the report that we produced because it has more details on each of these models and instruments. So thank you very much. Back to you, Nicola.
Yeah, thank you, Andre, and please take some water. It did run very fast, but it was very interesting and very informative as well. And I think it closes really the, let's say, the group of information that we wanted to get from this panel, going from more blended finance to one of the models, and then to open up on innovative finance. I know we are a little bit out of time and we actually still have some interaction for the audience to go through, so please bear with us. But before that, maybe I wanted to give the floor quickly to each one of you for a very quick, maybe just 30 seconds, 1 minute interaction. Maybe I start with you, Paul and Jivan, because I cut you short before. I'm sorry for that, but maybe you can expand a little bit on the model that you wanted to mention, and also know that you have a very interesting lighting as a service model, similar, I would say, but maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, to the first one that Andre was showing. But yeah, maybe Paolo, or if you want to, to give us a very sneak comment on that.
Yes, this is very interesting, and it's good to see the business model reflected back in the proposal, in the scheme that was very well explained by Andre. For more details about the difference for lighting and what is the added value, I will give the floor to Jivan. But you see, the technology is only at the end what you get, but the business model are very much overlapping. The added value of lighting is that you also get, between bracket, advantages. You get extra money due to the saving. So you pay less energy immediately from day one, and therefore you get money back in that sense. A kind of what Andrea explained in the last slide, that using a advertisement to get extra benefit from the leasing model. This is inherently embedded in lighting.
I will just add one point here, and which is everything that Andre has shown, right from the first laws to all the five structures. Each of those, we just need to have a better understanding to ensure that we are applying it for the right asset class, because the whole treatment of how it is done will change completely depending on the kind of asset you're looking at. So what may be valid for Andre may not necessarily be valid for lighting. But the structures are clearly those which can reduce the risk and ensure more acceptability for financiers to participate in this sector. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Indeed, that's indeed a clear point. Of course, the topic and the subject matter matters a lot. And maybe on that note, Edward, we haven't forgotten about you. And I saw that you also already answered to some Q&A in the chat, so thank you a lot for that. I was wondering before I was mentioning if you maybe have just one short example that you can give us. I saw that in the Q&A you gave several, but maybe one of either one in which blended finance will not work or one in which you have seen that it worked really well, and which one, if so.
I can go back to a number of very prosaic and day-to-day examples of small size, mid-size municipalities, which are normally the ones who are really lacking the human resources to go through these processes, that they can rely on these, I would say, very engaging and friendly facilities, like the one you mentioned, Nicola, the UCT facility. Then you also have those of the EEF and the EIB. Perhaps those are a bit more sophisticated for bigger projects or more ambitious. But for the first step, for a mid-size, a small-size municipality, I would suggest these kind of facilities that really help you in a very engaging and I would say even educating way to put together a first investment concept, which the word in itself already scares people out because these are very technical jargon, but in the end is putting together a simple document that clearly explains examples like Andrea. I think those were very, very good examples. Public bus, public mobility. In small cities, one line, three lines, it boils down to the same thing. So in the end, it's blended finance is there to really help you compile the information and put it in a certain format, in a certain way that you can engage with financial institutions or ESCO companies or technology providers like Signify.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks, Edward. Thanks a lot. I know that we have almost at a time. This shows that maybe a session should last one hour and a half. But anyway, we also wanted to have some interaction with the audience because so far, I mean, it's been a really interesting panel. But we also want to get a little bit the pulse of what attendees may be thinking of what we're mentioning today. So yeah, thanks, Charlotte, for putting it there. Very first, very introductory questions to ask, where are you joining us from today? And please take a moment to scan the QR code that you see there or to click on the Mentimeter that you see in the chat and to start pouring in, yeah, thanks, some information. And maybe given the time constraint, I will immediately, while you're still typing in, I'm sorry, move to the next more topic related question, if we can. Thanks. Which is how familiar with innovative financing approaches, such as the one that have been mentioned. And maybe in addition, if you can also write it in the chat if you have seen some new models that you didn't know about or something that caught your interest out of the presentation from Jenny, Signify, and Eclay. That could also inform us very much on in the way forward and on which material and capacity building we should focus on moving forward. And I see that you are adding, and it's good to see that there is a good amount of people that are somewhat familiar. But yeah, I see that the very familiar line is not that high, which means there is need for capacity building. And then to go to the next question, this is an open-end question, and is what is the biggest barrier for financing local renewable energy or energy efficiency projects in your context? If you can name maybe like if you can use maybe one or two word maximum. I know that this is not yeah, indeed, lack of knowledge. That was the point I wanted to get to. This is maybe not an easy one to get to, also considering the answers before. But I see, yeah, indeed, that's what was mentioned also by our fellow panelists, the silo governments. Yeah, there are information going in. Maybe while the attendees still type in, given that we have a couple of minutes left, and I haven't asked you, Andre, anything as a follow-up, and thanks again for the great presentation. Maybe my question would be related indeed to this, a little bit to this Mentimeter. That's all the information that you see appearing here. And what is your experience with both TAP and TUMI? If you see some of those resonates, and if you maybe have some solution from your side of any of these, maybe from the lack of knowledge or capacity, something that you are doing as eClean TAP that may help.
Thanks a lot, Nicola. I'll try to be brief, but I think indeed lack of knowledge and capacity is a big issue. I mean, when we're talking about blended finance or PPPs in general, this require usually very complex contracts and very complex modeling capacities, which are seldom available, especially in mid-sized cities and especially in the global south. And this requires, yeah, a lot of capacity. So building capacities to develop this kind of contract is fundamental. Because yeah, as we've been discussing here, this is one of the ways that cities can access financing more easily, but you can only do this if you're able to model a good PPP or contract, or if you have the capacity also to put together a solid investment concept, as Edward was saying now, and submit it for a blended finance facility or something like that. So I think this is definitely one of the points. I also wanted to mention that I think for me, perhaps the biggest barrier here, especially when we're talking once again about secondary cities and especially as the global south, is the high risks and transactional costs that the cities face. So I think we've discussed here a few ways to de-risk these investments and try to make private capital more accessible to them. But I would say that this is the highest risk. It's you don't have the cities are not usually don't have credit ratings, or the credit rating is really bad. They don't have reliable sources of revenue. So this would be something that I'd like just to highlight as well. But the instruments, the models that we've all presented here today, I think can help find a way out of this.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
if I may
Yeah.
add, Nicola, the good thing is that there is a solution for the lack of knowledge and capacity. It's clear. Cities need to count on, to rely on experts like G&E, like eClay, like Signify. That's the only way to approach it. It's like you need to invest a large amount of your own money. You need to rely on an investor, on a bank to do the right investment, because usually we don't have that right capacity. Otherwise, the risks are getting very, very high. So the network of expert is there, is experience, and relying on them is the solution.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Paolo. I couldn't have better closing words, and indeed, this is something that as Urban Transition Mission we try to do also with our partnership with Signify among others, and with eClay. We are coming at a closing. Thanks very much to Edward, Jivan, Paul, and Andre for the very interesting remarks. I believe we'll share with the audience also the results of the Mentimeters as well as the slides, so that you will have everything. But yeah, thank you very much for making the time. Before closing, just two quick announcements from my side and from the eClay team. So if you can put up the slides. Just to mention super quickly, this is one step in this blended finance deep dive that we're doing. The last step from our side, at least for the urban transition mission, will be at the UTM summit, which will take place in Rio, and the focus will be on blended finance. So it will be a full 1 day event focusing on the various aspects of blended finance for urban transitions. And if you can go to the next slide, as an intermediate point, coming up very soon, only in-person opportunity, unfortunately, but we will hold also a regional conference specifically with our South Asian and Indian cities in New Delhi for a strategic foresight workshop on the beginning of October. So stay tuned. There is still more to come, and we will also pour in information and results from those events into the platform, as well as into the Daring Cities series as well. And with that, I will thanks Kat and Charlotte for the coordination and give the floor back to Kanak for the closing words.
Yes, thanks a lot, Nicola. And I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us, and especially a big thank you to our speakers. I think the remarks were very interesting and insightful, and there's been a lot of engagement. So I hope you learned a lot. And if you'd like to continue learning, there will be another webinar starting in 2 hours, a continuation of the Daring Cities virtual forum, which will be on climate and sustainability communications. So do feel free to register for that one. And finally, yes, thanks to everyone. Thank you to the Daring Cities team, Kata, and especially Charlotte for their support and pulling this off. So have a nice day and hope to see you all again.